Hello Internet, I'm Jackie Fox. Welcome to Gumi Economics 106. No, you did not miss Gumi Economics 105. It hasn't come out yet. It won't come out for a while. I'm waiting for a game to release in June, July, I think. So it's going to be a while. But what we're going to be doing today, as a follow-up to one of the bigger topics of the Gumi Economics 100 series, is kind of reincarnation system. What are the values? What are the values of this system? What should I be going for? What currency should I be spending on what things? What is the most efficient way of doing this? And I just want to say that first of all, and it kind of feels intentional, there are way too many currencies in this game, and there are way too many ways to trade different currencies for different things that have different values in different currencies. This makes it almost impossible to really conceptualize comparative value. It's maddening. It's because there's not like, I could have like in the real world, in America, for instance, if I wanted to take a baseline that everyone could understand, that baseline would be US dollars, right? I could, because we have a pretty good understanding of what you can buy with $1, what you can buy with $10. So when I tell you that a thing costs $10, you can easily compare that in your head to other things that cost $10 and say, is this worth it to me? You can't really do that in wotv as well, so here's what I'm gonna do. First, I'm gonna try to use Viz as that relative currency. It's gonna make some of the numbers kind of weird. I'm gonna try to contextualize it as much as possible, but the first thing that we need to figure out is how much, because okay, so I have to find a currency that can be bought with a lot of other currencies, specifically currencies that I want to compare against a different resource. We figure out how effective they are at buying this resource, and then we use that to figure out how relatively effective they are at buying a different resource, and then we kind of compare those numbers and kind of say, okay, these are two things that you definitely need in the game. Which resources would be best to buy them in? That's what I'm hoping for at the end of this. So we're seeing that 10 for 1,000, effectively a single fragment of thought or awakening prism, is 100 Visior. And I feel like this is the price they were at the beginning of the game when they were much harder to get. And this price is, compared to a lot of other places, highly inflated. Just because it's never come down, while like a lot of these other stores that offer the same materials have decreased tremendously in price. And I think there's a lot of things that they could do to fix that, and then perhaps they should, but I think it's just safe to say you're probably just better off like not buying your prisms that way, and it's been that way for a very long time. Don't buy prisms with Viz. What you could buy prisms with is vent metals. There are going to be like 40 prisms and 40 fragments of each that you can purchase. I think no, not as low on dark as I thought. What about fire? Not super low on fire. I don't have a lot of stuff to spend here. Okay, yeah, we'll get those 5. Out of the currencies that we're talking about, this one is the one that's farmable. You are limited to 40 of each per event, which is a bit of a bummer because that's not really going to do a whole lot. But if you have extra time with an event, it is great to overfarm these. It's going to cost you 160,000 metals to buy all of the prisms and all of the fragments all at once. But it's a pretty good investment in the future of your account. So let's look at some other things that can buy prisms, and then I might switch over to the table that I made on my first pass of this video. Alright, so prisms in these two currencies, as well as fragments, only cost 20. And then the final place that I know of that is going to be important for this. Oh man, my heating pad's still on. Let me put that back on my neck. The other thing that you could do is you could buy them with soul metals. They're significantly cheaper with soul metals, which is going to make the relative value seem really good for soul metals. The thing is, I think that pound for pound soul metals are a lot more valuable than Viz, and I'm going to show you that with another table with another relative value comparison. And you're going to start to see the problem with trying to do relative value comparisons in this game and why it is kind of economically inscrutable in some ways, but without doing just a massive amount of mathematics and statistics that I am really not equipped for. But let me talk about the relative value in terms of prisms, fragments, for each of these currencies, keeping in mind that some currencies are more valuable than others in other ways. Again, this is the thing that makes the comparison hard. Also, all of these are going to be relative to the price in Viz. For event medals, you have to spend 2.5 times as many event medals as you do Viz. And while that sounds kind of bad, while it's the only one that is less efficient than buying it in Viz on a pound for pound thing, keep in mind that like your first clear of a mission is 50 Viz, and usually with events you can farm about 210 event medals per run, so these are very easily farmable, which makes them a really good option, as I mentioned before, for getting your prisms and fragments and kind of building those up in advance. 5x efficiency or 5x relative value for friend medals and guild medals. This is pretty important because there's a lot of things that you can do with those. There are units that you can buy shards for with those. In fact, let me... That's something that I should add to my next relative value table, the one that... Because I'm going to be doing 3 for this video to get an idea. So let's... And the reason I didn't include this the first time is because it's limited to certain characters, and that's not really a fair comparison to other things. But I'm giving you that context in this video, so let's go with guild friend. Spell friend right. It's gonna be 50 per shard, all the way up. So, guild and friend medals, 1-to-1, while they aren't nearly as flexible as Viz, although honestly, you can only buy consistently recent characters with Viz. You know, unless you show up on the Elemental Day. So maybe it's fairly limited as well. But, you know, it costs 50 Viz to get a single shard in the shop. It costs 50 guild or friend medals in the guild or friend medal shop to get a single shard. But with soul medals, it costs 5 to 10. And this is one of the reasons why, even with a 20x efficiency over Viz, well, first of all, I should point out that relative to its value, Viz's efficiency at this is already garbage, so it's a really terrible starting point. But even with that 20x increase, when you consider that it is 10x more efficient for buying shards, although technically it can't buy shards, it buys mind spheres, but whatever, you hear me. That really doesn't, you know, what was already a bad deal, being 20 times better than that doesn't really help when you're already 10 times better in another critically important resource that you are more likely saving these for. So with all of that being said, unfortunately, we can only make a few comparisons here but this does allow us to make a comparison of our reincarnation stuff. So the first place that we can buy these is the guild and friend metal shops. They're going to cost 5,000 antlers for MR scrolls. There is also an option for... Wait. Yeah, there is also an option for SR scrolls. But the game has so few SR units, they aren't actually being added to the game. Even now, I don't expect us to see a new SR unit in the next year. And we seem to be getting a lot of these for free. So here's the thing, I just don't think you buy these, ever. So they're not even on this chart. So we just have the 5,000 for MR scrolls. If you look at roughly the Viz price, and I had to kind of guesstimate a little bit because there were other things in these packages, but an MR scroll is roughly 200 Viz. So this gives us a relative, you know, currency for currency, Viz for guild metal, 25x relative weakness in value on this, which I don't think is terribly bad. It depends on what else, you know, the value to you of your friend and guild medals might be different than it is for me, right? I think it varies a bit from account to account depending on what you need out of those shops. If you're earlier on and you're still building up some of those free units and you particularly need one of those free units, then you're probably spending all of these medals you get per day and like they're highly valuable to you. If you have already done a lot of that, then maybe these don't matter as much if you aren't really using them for prisms, if you kind of got your prisms on lock and you aren't having to use them for that. If you really got your resources figured out and have been playing for a while, then maybe these are less valuable to you. Maybe you can save up for MR scrolls. However, I do want to make the same point that I made with SR scrolls, but a little less true here, that we aren't getting new MR units terribly quickly. There aren't a lot in the game to begin with, and you probably aren't gonna care as much about them in general. Like you're still gonna build some of them because they've always been good in certain formats at the very least, but if you're trying to build like Nasha or Daria right now, you may feel like you want more of these because it's easy to get shards for MR units, so you may feel like, well, the value here is if I reincarnate this character 40 times really early, so you might be wanting these any way you can get them. But I think in the long term, if you can afford to be patient, that these are going to get a lot. You're just going to get a ton of these for free. Like, every time I've seen a JP player complain about the price of these in the shop, they also have stocked like 800 of them. So it's like, yeah, but why would you buy 20 of these in the shop when you already have 800? You know what I mean? Like, I just don't think that this matters, this particular one. UR scrolls, though, those are a big deal. So let's talk about UR scrolls. UR scrolls are going to cost about, at this point, 400 Viz. I think that price might go down over time, but it is good that there is competition. 200 soul medals is not terrible. That is a 2x efficiency, but just keeping in mind that soul medals already have a 20x efficiency with prisms. So a 2x efficiency isn't particularly huge here. I mean, it does... I think maybe the value isn't as important with this one as it is this may be one of your only quote-unquote free avenues of getting them. Because unlike what I've said about the previous two, we are getting more UR units all the damn time, like at least one per week, and I mean at least two per month, and then probably like a good 5 to 10 awakenings per month. maybe like 15 or 20. I don't know. Like, the pace is pretty... There's a lot... Compared to the other two, there's a lot of demand and not a lot of supply. These just aren't coming for free, and we need them bad. So maybe it's just enough that this is an alternate way of getting them for you. For Viz Antlers, I'm sure there's people who feel two different ways about Viz Antlers. For me, it being selective, playing certain elements, just the general way that I try to teach people to think about the game, I don't see a situation where I'm going to use like the 4 or 5 Viz Antlers that we've gotten already anytime soon. The closest I came to that was realizing that my 120 Dwayne, Elena, and Freyevia are all on the same account, and I do kind of want to at least test in 140 all of them, and then realizing that I only had 2 Viz Antlers. This is really the first time that I would be forced to buy a Viz Antler since this system came out, so that's probably good, but also it's really unreasonable for me to be building all 3 of these characters. Dwayne makes sense, even though he's probably the one I'm least psyched about and least confident in the awakening for. So I'll probably just go with Elena, even though I don't necessarily have a modern team to use her on, like with any 140 love yet. I mean, I guess I might wait for Locke to 140 her, but then again, I want to test. I'm the person who took Elena. Wait, I'm realizing that it was pre-Elena that I got so high in Arena. I did get really high in Arena on Elena week, but it was actually fucking Summer Killfay that got me into the top of Arena. That's why I love the girl so much. Okay, never mind. I forgot how long ago it was that I got 13th place in Arena. Wow, I did that with a rainbow team, you guys. How much has the meta changed in the last couple years that used to be possible? Anyways, the relative price value for these is actually 5 times more efficient for soul metals, as it looks like it's going to cost you around 2,500 Viz to get a Viz Antler. Now, that being said, this is just me looking at my chart and reading from it, and, you know, again, oops, didn't mean to take a screenshot. I don't want to delete it. Thank you. I just don't want it. But I think this is kind of similar to what I was saying about your guild and friend medals, and that there's going to be very different types of players. Like, for myself personally, on my main account, I've got like 5,000 of these built up because I have pretty much every character in the game like with their first 600 shards. So pretty much anytime I pull a character, I get 40 more medals, and I like farm these on the daily, and you know, you're getting 10 per day from hard quests, and you're probably getting another 10 or 12 per day from barracks. Anyways, you play for long enough, these things really build up. But on the other hand, you could be a new player kind of in the situation that I would be in on this account, and really, like, I want Heo Mind Spheres, you know what I mean? Like, I want to get me some more Sephiroth Mind Spheres. I don't have the funds to waste. I mean, you know, it's not really a waste, but like, I don't have the funds to buy this. But at the same time, just to bring it back to what I was saying before, I don't think there's necessarily a situation where a brand new player is gonna need to buy extra Viz Antlers. Like, I don't even have that many characters at UR that I can 140. I'm working on 2, and there is a Viz Antler yet for me to collect because my Medinia is just trash on this account. Or my friend's Medinia, this isn't really my account. But I just don't need the extra Viz Antler, so it's kind of a moot point So I think that this is going to be more of a dilemma for people who are in the middle, who kind of have to spend those resources both ways. But it really depends where you are in your economy, I guess, like what your supply and demand issues are in game, whether or not these are good values for you. And again, I'm probably going to skip out on the Viz Antler. That is kind of expensive, but 200 for a set of scrolls, it's not generous, but it's not terrible. I mean, at least it's less expensive than the Blossoms of Paradise, for fuck's sake. You certainly need a lot more of them than you do Blossoms of Paradise, and sure, I would love a value of like 100, maybe better, right here, and 200 over here makes sense, seeing as these are kind of, they're still necessary, but they're not like top tier power anymore, so they could stand to fall off in value like Awakening Prisms and stuff has. And by the way, these could stand to drop down to like 3 and 1 themselves. These are so easy to farm now, and like you don't even have to be far into the game to be able to farm these effectively at this point. And because of the trading system, they're just amazing now. So, you know, if you've been following my advice, you know all about that. You would never spend 3 soul medals on one of these, never even spend 1 soul medal on one of these, but these prices are kind of ridiculous anyways. And, you know, again, depending on which type of player you are, these might be kind of ridiculous prices if you're, you know, in this situation where, you know, I've got this character 140, and these are the 2 units that I'm thinking that are like going to be my next 140s. I need to buy these spheres. Thankfully, they're not limited, so I'm not like in a huge rush about it, but yeah, I'm definitely not buying Viz Antlers on this account, I guess is what I'm saying, but these prices make more sense to me than some of the other ones, and these are things that you might actually want to purchase. I think the other things you'll feel like you might want to purchase early on, but over time you'll realize there's absolutely no point. I mean, I haven't really made many purchases on this account, and I've gone pretty all in on Prince Mont, because there's not really other Shadow Links. I guess I could go in on Shadow Links. And I also went... Have I? I think I've gone pretty heavy on Little Leela at this point as well. Maybe, maybe not. But I already have 260 of these just sitting around. So, like, I don't feel the need to buy 20 of these at any point, especially not for these values, even if I could. But again, you know, having them at a similar value to Blossoms of Paradise feels okay. Although this is even weirder because, like, these are less valuable, and yet they're the same price, even when they're but these aren't. And this kind of thing, like this kind of economic inconsistency of relative values across the board, which creates all of these weird situations where you have to crunch a bunch of numbers to figure out which currency you should be spending most effectively to get a specific resource. It's all fucking nuts. But that is why Gumi Economics is here to help you. And I saved the nerdy part for the end. You can see some of... Let me swap some things out here and show you some of the math that I was doing kind of behind the scenes, and let you just see what these are kind of in the relative prices. And again, you have to consider that 1 Viz is probably worth a hell of a lot more than most of these resources, and that especially for certain players, soul medals are going to be worth a lot more than some of these other resources. Like, you would much rather pay at the 5x rate with guild medals than waste any amount of soul medals, even with a much higher relative value. And, you know, this kind of tells you similar stories about shards and other awakening materials as well. And somehow my icon still hasn't updated on this, but yeah. Here we are. Oh, also I looked up what a price index is, and I guess index has a certain over time aspect to it that I wasn't thinking about. So I'm just really doing a more of a relative price chart as opposed to a relative price index, which would track these things over time, which is, there's not like good historical economic data on wotv. There's nobody else who gives this much of a shit about this kind of thing as I do. So there's no one doing record keeping of relative values and that kind of shit. So as far as I know, like if there is someone doing this, let me know, because I am curious about the numbers behind the scenes and relative values and concepts like that. But also, like, even putting this into numbers, this is still, I made the video and I'm still finding this difficult to conceptualize, even though I have done the work of trying to create a chart to help me figure it out. And that's really one of the annoying economic realities of this game, I think. But instead of complaining about that more, I'm gonna hope that you learned something. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. Let me know what you think of the method. Did this make sense to you as a way of trying to figure out, like, if the prices were good or not? Because I think it's easy for us to have kind of like gut instincts or kind of community-based instincts, kind of like, you know, everybody buys their extra prisms in the community with like friend and guild medals, I guess. That's one of like the go-to places, I think, for people who are in the know. You know, we figure these things out, but we don't necessarily, like, we're going by gut, right? So I want to put a little bit of like actual concrete evidence, math behind it. But at the same time, it takes us time to build those gut instincts. And without those gut instincts, math is really all we have to go on in order to figure out how these new things work. And like, I wish there had been somebody who had done this on JP. But no, this whole concept had to wait for me to give enough of a shit. God damn! This concept had to wait for me to give enough of a shit about it to actually do it and to look through the shops and all that. So again, if you appreciate the effort, if you like what I'm putting out here, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, fucking join my Discord, do the things, send me money, because life is hard, and this does take up time that otherwise could be spent generating money for myself, I guess. I hate the idea of spending my time with the purpose of generating money, but it is a harsh economic reality of this world. It is a thing that I have to consider, so if you would like to help me with that, I appreciate you so much. And I'll see you in the next one.